Howdy, welcome to Government Canyon State Natural Area. You are at the Visitor Center. Thank you for downloading our audio tour. This audio tour was designed for use on the Discovery Trail. As you hike this trail, you will learn more about this area's largest and most important local hydrological feature, the Edwards Aquifer. Each segment on the tour playlist is labeled with a number corresponding to a stop along the trail. The marker for each stop includes information about the local environment that's worth a read, but not part of this audio tour. Each segment is about 2 minutes long and designed for you to take a short break while you listen. But the segments shouldn't overlap one another if you decide to keep listening while you hike. Be sure to take advantage of the educational material around the visitor center that supplements this tour. With any luck, the weather's nice for you today, but before you leave the visitor center, make sure you've got enough water for your hike. If you're not certain about how much you're going to need, the staff will be able to help you out. They'll also have trail maps available, so grab one of those before you go. Your next stop is located near the restrooms in front of the collection of large rocks. Hit play on the audio track titled Bedrock Garden.
Look at the boulders in front of you. Each of these boulders represent an organization involved in the creation of Government Canyon State Natural Area. 45 groups and organizations were involved in this effort. These boulders are made up of Edwards limestone, a type of sedimentary rock. Walk up to a boulder. What do you notice about it? Do you see holes and cracks? Geoscientists call cracks fractures and holes pores. Porosity refers to the amount of empty space inside of something, like the fractures and pores found between sand and gravel and within solid rock. What does it feel like? Is it smooth? Is it rough? The rough divots and holes reflect the legacy of how water has interacted with the limestone. Let's continue learning. The next stop is located at the sign marking the Discovery Trailhead. When you arrive, play the track labeled Discovery Trailhead on your audio.
Locate the Discovery Trail sign that is close to the ground at this stop. From where you are standing right now, turn so that the bridge is on your left and the visitor center buildings are to your right. Ever wonder where your drinking water comes from? Find the horizon past the limestone rock wall where higher ground, known as the hill country, is. When it rains, rainwater will run down from that high point to lower points. Some of it will seep through the ground. The rest will run down toward the visitor center. The limestone rock wall in front of you directs the runoff down into Government Canyon Creek. Without this diversion, water would flood the visitor center during major rain events. All right, let's continue on our adventure. Head across the bridge and down the trail until you find the Texas Mountain Laurel sign. The track to listen to next has the same name.
A state natural area is a place that's been set aside for conservation of an important asset or resource. Here, our resource is the Edwards Aquifer. If you are a San Antonio local, it's almost guaranteed you've heard something about the Edwards Aquifer. It's a huge part of San Antonio life, and that's for a very good reason. The city is physically located almost entirely above it, and until the last decade, San Antonians got nearly all their water from the good old Edwards. Y'all might wonder, what is an aquifer? My favorite description remains an underground mud puddle. And while it is certainly a description, it isn't actually accurate. In fact, the term aquifer doesn't refer to water at all, but instead refers to a body of rocky material underground that stores and transmits water naturally. The rocky material can be of different types, from loose sand and gravel to solid rocks with fractures and pores. The Edwards Aquifer is an example of a solid rock aquifer made of limestone. As water flows through existing holes and cracks within the limestone, it dissolves the rock to create larger pathways for water to move through the aquifer. The more fractured and porous this limestone becomes, the more water it can hold and the easier the water flows. How deep is the aquifer under your feet? The top of the aquifer varies across the area. In some places, like the Gomal Springs, the top of the aquifer is close enough to the surface that its water discharges as a spring feeding the Comal River. Where's the bottom of the aquifer? That's determined by a layer of clay that sits below the limestone, forming what's known as a confining layer, which, unlike the limestone layer above it, doesn't allow water to seep through. Aquifers are one of the primary sources of water used throughout the world. In addition to the Edwards, there are many other aquifers in Texas, including the Ogallala, the Trinity, and the Carrizo-Wilcox aquifers. Enjoy your walk to the next stop. The marker titled Poison Ivy will be on the left side of the trail. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
The anatomy of an aquifer system consists of 3 parts: the contributing zone, also known as the drainage zone, the recharge zone, and the artesian zone. The Edwards Aquifer System stretches across 8 different counties, from west of Uvalde County to near Austin in the east. This means that roughly 8,000 square miles of Texas sits over or contributes to the Edwards Aquifer. In the contributing zone, most of the aquifer water is gathered. In the Edwards Aquifer, the contributing zone is located across most of the hill country to the north of us and reaches as far as Austin to the east and Fredericksburg to the west. Water in this area gathers and flows south towards us here in San Antonio. The recharge zone is right under your feet here at Government Canyon State Natural Area and extends east and west. Recharge occurs when water seeps into the ground and reaches the aquifer. Due to the porous nature of the Edwards limestone that makes up the recharge zone, water flows freely into the Edwards Aquifer. The landscape around here consists of highly fractured limestone containing features like sinkholes and large caverns that allow a large quantity of water to enter the aquifer at a fast rate, making it a highly productive aquifer. This type of landscape is known as karst. The artesian zone is where the water is harvested. This can be done through human-drilled wells. These wells penetrate down into the aquifer and use pump systems to extract water. Natural pressure can also force up water through natural springs like the San Marcos Springs and Comal Springs. If you have ever been tubing in the San Marcos River or the Comal River, you are floating in spring-fed water directly from the Edwards Aquifer. Well, folks, that's all for this stop. As you continue, look out for your next stop on the right. It's the Plateau Live Oak marker. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
Here, we'll talk about what makes up the Edwards Aquifer and how the rocks are vital to the underground transport and storage of the water we drink. Let's begin. Remember the large boulders up by the visitor center, which you touched at the beginning of the tour? These are examples of the iconic Edwards limestones, rock which makes up much of the ground in this area. This is the rock that holds and transport your water through our local aquifer. The Edwards Aquifer is composed of Edwards limestone, a rock that is highly soluble or able to be dissolved. Limestone and certain other rocks that contain the chemical compound calcium carbonate undergo a pretty cool reaction when they are exposed to acids. Most rainwater is mildly acidic, a property that increases with the presence of certain pollutants in the atmosphere. When this mildly acidic rain falls on limestone, it causes the rock to react chemically, dissolving ever so slightly. Over time, this dissolution can create holes, voids, and even massive cave systems in the rock that can transport water and store it for some time, just like a sponge. Put simply, rainwater passes through the soil beneath your feet, and the holes and cracks in rock below act as a conduit, allowing water to infiltrate and move downward into the Edwards Aquifer. The soil and rock underneath your feet are the literal doorways to your drinking water. Now, let's talk about the past environment of Government Canyon. 265 million years ago, this area of Texas was covered in a shallow sea with tons of prehistoric life, such as aquatic reptiles, crabs, oysters, sea urchins, ammonites, and many more beautiful prehistoric fauna. Scientists currently believe that the rocks deposited in this natural area are at least 110 million years old. At the time, this area was a muddy tidal flat where dinosaurs roamed, and other aquatic sea life such as oysters and clams would have thrived. This tidal flat would have allowed non-aquatic creatures, including dinosaurs, to move freely from one area to another. Some dinosaur tracks are present at Government Canyon State Natural Area. More information on those can be found at the Visitor Center. But remember to not pick up any rocks to keep for yourself while you are hiking. It is always important to leave all natural resources and artifacts untouched in their natural state. Your next stop is the Texas Persimmon Trail Marker. It'll be on the right side of the trail, and the track in the Audiotour has the same name. Make sure to check your socks and your hiking boots for loose sediment, because now we're going to be talking about sedimentary rocks. Sedimentary rocks make up the majority of rocks in Texas. The Edwards limestone is one kind of sedimentary rock. Limestone has a unique formation process. In the ancient oceans that used to cover Texas, millions and millions of tiny sea creatures with shells made of a chemical called calcium carbonate lived and died and settled to the bottom of the warm, shallow sea. Over time, pressure compressed this organic material into the limestone that makes up the majority of today's Texas surface rock. Remember that the Edwards Aquifer is made of Edwards limestone. Some other sedimentary rocks like sandstones and shells are formed as pieces of rocks, are weathered and eroded away, then deposited in layers which compact together until they eventually harden into solid rocks. Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer is made of this type of sedimentary rock. Your next stop is the wooden walking bridge, located just a little further ahead on the trail. When you get to the center of the bridge, hit the track titled the Recharge Bridge.
On this bridge, you'll see the creek bed below you. Sometimes when it rains enough, water flows through this creek. However, due to the area's rapid recharge rate, this water quickly seeps through the ground and into the limestone, leaving the creek bed dry soon after the storm. Different factors contribute to an aquifer's recharge rate: the amount of precipitation the contributing or recharge zone receives, as well as the geology, topography, soil, and vegetation of the aquifer's recharge zone. Groundwater stored in aquifers is vital to the United States water supply. The city of San Antonio and other major cities like it throughout the United States depend heavily on aquifers to supply water. In the U.S., 37% of our water supply comes from groundwater aquifers. Each aquifer has a unique structure and formation history and is comprised of different types of rocks. These rock features determine how quickly water in that specific aquifer can flow and fill. Let's consider the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, which is located across the southeastern portion of Texas, including southern Bexar County. It is made up of layers of gravel, clay, silt, and lignite, which are less permeable than the limestone which makes up the Edwards Aquifer. This means that groundwater cannot move into the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer as easily as water moves into the Edwards Aquifer. Because of its unique limestone makeup, the Edwards Aquifer allows water to flow more freely, thus increasing the recharge rate and filling the aquifer a lot faster. Your next stop is the Wafer Ash sign. You should see it on the right side of the trail. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
Hey, look down. Hopefully what you see is dirt and not a snake that you've wandered dangerously close to. If there does happen to be a snake, back away slowly and give it plenty of space. Most of the gravel that is directly under your feet was brought in by natural area staff to help stabilize this trail against erosion. But it also helps keep the human footprint around here fairly small by clearly defining the trail boundary. People wandering off the path can disturb the local environment, so make sure you're staying on the established trails at Government Canyon. Did y'all know, just like rocks, onions, and ogres, there are also layers to soil? They're called horizons, and they aren't actually that deep in this part of the natural area. Here, as with many areas of Texas, as anyone who's had to dig around here can attest to, the local bedrock is close to the surface. The next time you see an ant mound nearby, take the opportunity to really examine what it is made from. You might notice that in addition to a superfine brown dirt, there are little white specks the size of sand grains in the mound. Those white pieces are limestone that the ants have dislodged from below and brought to the surface as they built their home underground. This happens because the local bedrock, the Edwards limestone, is really close to the surface here. Soil serves a rather vital function in recharge zones like this one. This is the layer which supports the local plant life. These plants, along with the soil itself, help filter out pollutants from runoff that might otherwise seep into your drinking water. Kind of like how a coffee filter stops the grounds from ending up in your coffee. This filtration is super important because karst aquifers, like the one at Government Canyon, lack the ability to naturally filter water on their own. Ahead you will come to a fork in the trail. This tour assumes that you will take the right-hand trail to your next stop. It's all about water. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
It is important to protect our water resource in the Edwards Aquifer because this region experiences major droughts. To avoid interference at a federal level, the Edwards Aquifer Authority, EAA, was established in 1993 by the Texas legislature, replacing the Edwards Underground Water District. The EAA was established to protect endangered species and the rights of water users like the city of San Antonio. It is an outgrowth of earlier management strategies by the Edwards Underground Water District, whose mission began in 1959 to manage, conserve, and protect the aquifer and species that are part of the ecosystems supported by the Edwards Aquifer. Learn all about the conservation efforts which the Edwards Aquifer Authority has put into place to protect our aquifer system, secure our drinking water, and preserve habitat for the many endangered species that call the Edwards Aquifer home by visiting their website at www.edwardsaquifer.org. Your next stop is at the Cedar Elm sign. It'll be on the left side of the trail. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
The EAA takes habitat conservation measures very seriously, which is why the Edwards Aquifer Habitat Conservation Plan was created. The conservation plan protects federally listed, threatened, and endangered species that live in the springs and the Edwards Aquifer. The continuous dissolution of limestone creates large holes like sinkholes and caves. These are specialized, isolated habitats that host unique types of living organisms. These species are native to the springs, like the Comal and San Marcos Springs, and the karst habitat of the Edwards Aquifer, meaning that these species are very special and can only be found in these sensitive, unique environments. There are 11 species protected under the conservation plan, including the San Marcos salamander and the Comal Springs riffle beetle. No other place on Earth has these creatures. Continue on to the next marker, which will be the Ashe Juniper sign on the left. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
The Edwards Aquifer Authority works hard to protect our drinking water by putting policies in place that limit water consumption. The EAA calls this the Critical Period Management, CPM. For example, the city puts water restrictions in place when the aquifer level drops to certain levels, usually during times of drought. You may recognize some of these types of restrictions from news reports on the different water restriction stages of San Antonio communities, like the ones limiting which days you are allowed to water your lawn on. These decisions are based on measurements taken from the J17 monitoring well that was drilled in 1913 and is located at Fort Sam Houston. The EAA also offers incentives for water conservation. An example of this is the Flow Protection Measures Program that offers financial compensation to permit holders who reduce or completely halt their groundwater withdrawal. The City of San Antonio, as well as agriculture users and industries, are examples of permit holders. Programs like this aim to keep our aquifer healthy by preventing overuse. The goal is to ensure that future generations will have access to clean, readily available water. Your next stop is at the prickly pear cactus marker on the right side of the trail. The track in the Audiotour has the same name.
Now that you understand how important protecting the Edwards Aquifer is, here are some water conservation practices you can do at home. Take shorter showers and install low-flow shower heads. An average shower head sprays about 2.1 gallons of water per minute, and baths can use up to 30 gallons. Fix any leaky faucets or pipes. A slow leak can waste up to 15 gallons a day. Water your lawn and outdoor plants early in the morning, and consider setting up a drip irrigation system or soaker hoses to use water more efficiently. Better yet, consider xeriscape. By planting Texas native species which don't rely on supplemental water for survival, you will be able to use little to no water to maintain these plants in your yard, since these species have adapted to the Texas climate and are drought tolerant. Plus, you'll be providing habitats for all sorts of other native Texas species, like birds and butterflies, to live. Do you remember when we talked about how quickly water can recharge and travel through limestone? This means that proper use and disposal of the materials and chemicals we use around our home is critically important to aquifer health. Some of these household toxins include motor oil, paint, household cleaners, and prescriptions. If you are unsure where to properly dispose of these chemicals, you can call 311 or visit the website www.311.sanantonio.gov. Finally, remember that Government Canyon is a state natural area designated to protect our city's most precious water source, the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone. Here are some things that you can do while you're visiting to help keep our natural area healthy. Stay on the trails to avoid habitat and soil disturbance. Keep your adorable pets on leashes. Stick to the trail set aside for dogs, and always pick up after yourself and your furry little friends. Thank you for taking the time to learn all about the history of the Edwards Aquifer, how it was created, how it works, and most importantly, how we can preserve and protect our water.
This audio tour was a collaborative effort between Government Canyon State Natural Area and the GeoEngage program operated from the University of Texas at San Antonio and Northwest Vista College. GeoEngage was funded by grant number 2119446 from the National Science Foundation. Northwest Vista students Alyssa Huddle, Crystal Castillo, and Dominic Campos developed the content and narrated the tour with the support from geoscience faculty at UT San Antonio and Northwest Vista.